Welcome to the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. I'm Dr. Kori Propst here with Dr. Joe Klemczewski. Macro mastery today, and we're discussing overhaulization. I just made that word up. Overhauling your macros. When is it appropriate? Why would we do it? How do we even start?
Well, we'll definitely use that for the title now. I think
overhaulization.
We can, yeah, that'll be a thing. We can get that in the dictionary probably in a year or two.
I like it.
So the reason I wanted to talk about this, Kori, is because it's a question we get from our Diet Doc program owners all the time. And almost from the dawn of time of our company, it's very common for a program owner to say, hey, Joe, I need some help with this client. They haven't been, losing for a week or two or something. And so I need to know how to adjust their macros. And the first impulse from everybody, whether it's a coach or probably ourselves, is, hey, I'm stuck. The whole system needs to be turned upside down. We got to do something to shake out some new progress. And I have a list of things that I think are far, far easier to adjust. You may need, we'll get to that. You may need to change your macros. Yeah. But before you get knee jerky and just feel like every time you're stuck, you have to do that. Let's go through a short list, kind of a troubleshooting guide on what may be a better move.
I like this. I have my own list of things as well, Joe, and probably most of them match up with yours.
I bet they do.
But here's what I'm imagining in my head. Ben, my partner, taking the engine out of his car and replacing it with a different one. And that just seems like a lot of unnecessary work. So I think what we're going to move into is a discussion around how we don't need to be that extreme about things most times to see some positive shifts happen.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So before you even said it, I had the exact same thought that when you mentioned you have a process, I knew right away that we're gonna have the exact same points. But the first one for me is looking at real data. So whether it's a client or a coach who says, hey, I need a change, or this person needs a change, it's almost like they often expect me just to shoot from the hip, pull out a shotgun and say, bam, here you go. Here's a new program. This will work out perfectly.
Well, Joe, and I think clients expect that too. They're like, what should my macros be?
Right.
This isn't working. Where should my macros go? Right. Well, where have you been? What's been happening?
So the first thing I do is ask for a complete history. Let me see a summary, a cumulative record of your entire process, not just the last week. Sometimes even a client will, just be getting started and they'll send me a snapshot of that week. And I say, no. I need the last 3 months. I need to see all of these trend lines. I need to see all of the data. So then we can start analyzing exactly where things might be going wrong. So I'm looking for accuracy. I'm looking for consistency. And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, right there is the answer. I can even look at net weekly average. If somebody thinks they're stuck this week, I can look at their net daily average weight. I can look week to week. I can check month to month and show them that, yeah, this week may look a little bit different because you're only looking at this one data point. Yeah. But you're fine. Look what's happened. Or I see holes in their schedule. I see, oh, well, look here over this week, which happened to be a holiday or your vacation, you gained 3 pounds. The next week you lost 3 pounds. And so, yes, your net average is off, but don't you think we can do a couple correlational things there and figure that out without overhauling the whole system?
Putting the pieces of the puzzle together. I think a lot of what we do, Joe, is just about explaining what they're not seeing a lot of times. Is, no, this actually makes a lot of sense, what's happening. It's not a mystery. Yeah. That weekly average is a really important one that you brought up, because most people are just looking at what's happening today, and then today, and then today, and we're not looking at the trends.
Yeah, and so as you're suggesting, I'm getting just a lay of the land. I'm looking at our entire history of trends. And once I'm satisfied with that, then I will consider, what is the overall calorie base? Maybe you have been dieting for 3 or so months, and it is time to make some kind of adjustment, because now you're leaner, you're healthier, your body's physiologically more efficient. So I'll keep that in the back of my mind. Like calories, we may need to adjust. Let's consider that a possibility. But then I move right into food sources and meal structure, meal timing. And so I'll say, okay, now that I've seen that survey, that overview, send me a couple of your typical days. I need actual food logs from your app, or however you want to sketch that out for me. But I want to see, maybe they're eating out in a restaurant once or twice a day, or maybe they're eating all these processed foods that may not be very accurate.
You're looking at quality at this point. Yeah,
maybe they're just so scattered and inconsistent, always eating different foods at different times, different amounts. That's a place where you could have a big drop off in accuracy. So a lot of times I'll say, okay, now that I trust where we are with your overall, history, and I'm open to the fact that we may need a change, but I'm really concerned about the lack of structure, the lack of consistency. So maybe we could pull back a little bit and start working on a meal plan that has a little bit more structure, a little bit less flexibility. And Kori, to this day, 20 some years of consulting, when I get that person to that point of following an exact meal plan, we're not going to do this forever, but let's just try this for a week. I've never had somebody not resume a fantastic pace. Nobody has ever needed me to just blow up the system. I do want to talk about that hypothetical and when it's appropriate, but when we get down to that point, it always seems to auto-regulate. People end up being, moved right back on track.
Yeah, I've had the same experience, Joe, especially in terms of just getting them a bit more structure and less haphazard in terms of when and how and what they're eating without a calorie change at all.
Right. And the final thing I look at before this actual change that we'll chat about is activity level. I mean, a lot of people just aren't that aggressive with their training. They're kind of walking through the motions. They're not doing a lot of intensity or maybe enough volume. And so while any activity is great, and that could be progressively where you need to be, I often do have to coach our coaches, hey, let's not just look at the nutrition. Let's look at your client and where he or she is at, and can we step up and challenge them a little bit in their training? And then all of a sudden, you and I talked about this before. If in my morning cardio, which I designed to be more of a just wake me up and get me going, if I step up that intensity, like this morning, I was feeling it for some reason, and so I was just like, man, I was way out in front of my normal distance on the bike and the intensity. So I know I'm going to not only be hungrier today, but I'm burning more calories in that post-exercise, time frame. So those are the things that I think can also be helpful with clients that are stuck.
I think we do have a lot of clients who aren't coming to us doing any sort of exercise. And can you lose body fat without exercising with a change in your nutrition? Absolutely you can. But to your point, gosh, and we addressed this in a previous podcast, there are so many benefits to moving your body. Just walking instead of sitting, you're burning double the amounts of calories that you would otherwise. So I don't think people realize just how significant it is getting up and moving, even if they're doing something every 50 minutes. If they have a desk job, getting up and doing something for 5. But okay, so let's review. What are we doing first?
You're gonna look at that history. You're gonna look for consistency and accuracy and make sure that what you're consuming. This is a real huge part of the conversation right now nationally in our industry. There are more and more studies coming out showing how vastly underestimated it has been, how people underestimate their food intake. And so there are a lot of memes going around and a lot of sharing of articles and all that. And so we've got to have consistency and accuracy and true data for yourself, for your clients. You know, that's just imperative to even be in the right game.
Licks, bites, and tastes. Those things never get logged. Mm-hmm. And they can add up. Okay.
Yep. So then your food sources, your meal spacing, meal structure, having more consistency and just a planned structure with your food. So we're looking at overall planning consistency. Yeah. Then we're looking down to the meals and the food sources. Then we're looking at activity and can you step up your exercise at all? Okay. But then finally, when it is time to make a change, you know, this is kind of the crux of what I wanted to hit today. Mm-hmm. You know, some changes are meaningful and some are not. I'll have a lot of coaches sometimes say, well, I want to move, you know, my clients' carbs down 5 or 10 grams, or up, you know, I'm going to increase fat by 3 grams. And I'm like, you know, I mean, and again, I don't want to make fun of somebody like that, but you know, we have to consider that on 1,200 or 1,500 or 2,000 calories a day, mm-hmm. making a change that trivial and insignificant when the overall 24-hour span of energy expenditure could be so different. I always view making changes in terms of almost 100-calorie chunks.
Well, making them meaningful.
Yeah. So if I really do feel like somebody needs a reduction, you know, I have choices. I can move protein down, carbs down, fat down. I could make it a combination. And so very, very in line with some of our other podcasts mm-hmm. on how to even design macronutrient profiles, I'm always going to look at a percentage of things. So first of all, with protein, I'm comparing their protein intake to the RDA and 1.5 times the RDA and 2 times the RDA. And I want to make sure that, because there can be an overage there. What if somebody's at 2 times the RDA and they just don't need that protein? Their body's not using it efficiently. So maybe I can reduce protein a little bit, even increase carbs a little bit, and that isocaloric change may get them moving a little bit, because now I'm adding some metabolic firepower to them with adding those carbohydrates. Mm-hmm. I'm also looking at fat as a percentage. So writing for Tier 2, the National Academy of Metabolic Science, I'm in the middle of finalizing our manuscript for that. Because that next course, Tier 2, is all about, you know, aggressive physique transformation in the physique sports. And over the weekend, I was just editing this section on macros. And again, you know, doing the math, showing what 20% of your calories from fat looks like in terms of food, what 25%, 30%, maybe down to 10%. So I'm always looking, if somebody's goal is to lose body fat, to bring fat grams down to a point where it's still, you know, fine for them having some food flexibility, but so that I can keep the carbs high, because that's where you're going to get more thermic potential, more anabolic capacity from your food, and it's going to be more metabolically stimulating.
Sure. And then we're thinking about how, from a practical standpoint, how easy is it going to be for them to implement these macronutrients if fat is that low, if fat's at 10%, and what is that going to allow in terms of, like, if protein is somewhat high, this is a person who's training really hard but wants aggressive fat loss, we have to consider those sorts of things as well. Where's the fat coming from?
That is exactly, Kori, what I think most coaches don't consider is that, you know, our brains are patterning organs, right? Like human beings. We like symmetry in these numbers, but we often don't think, what is this going to really be like for a client? Yeah. And so it's so funny speaking to other coaches about that, because it's almost like that was so secondary and off the grid to them. They just need the perfect set of numbers, and they're not thinking about that other person as a living, breathing human being.
I see some macros sometimes and I'm like, I'm going to ask the coach to try that. and see how far they get, because that's going to be really difficult. Yeah.
Awesome. So guys, that's all I wanted for today. In the macro mastery segment of our podcast, I'm going to start breaking down a couple other different types of diets, some things that we haven't given a lot of time for in the past. Some interesting research I saw coming out on the Mediterranean diet and some other things. So appreciate you guys watching and listening. We're going to come back at you with a lot more stuff in the next few days.
Thanks, guys.